What's up, duelists? I'm Ashton, aka SmashtonYGO, and I wanted to do a little bit of a different kind of video today. There's been a lot of discussion recently in the Yu-Gi-Oh community, both on Twitter and through videos, about Yu-Gi-Oh as a card game as a whole, its mechanics, and also how easy it is for players to get into the game if you're new. And one important thing that keeps getting brought up sometimes as people have been comparing Yu-Gi-Oh to other card games like Magic the Gathering, Hearthstone, Runeterra, etc., are these things called keywords. Now, keywords as a concept is pretty simple. You essentially have some kind of word printed on the card that won't take up a lot of space, and it is something that you just need to know as a game mechanic. For example, flying is a common keyword on a lot of Magic cards, and it essentially allows you to attack your opponent, and they cannot block with one of their creatures to prevent the damage unless they also have flying, or another keyword called reach, which allows them to actually hit the flying monsters without having flying themselves. Now, this does two things. Number one, it changes the game mechanics so that instead of having a bunch of text on every single card explaining what flying does every single time, you just have the keyword, and once you learn what that keyword means, you can then apply it to every other card that says flying. So it saves a lot of space on the card itself. Number two, it makes it a little bit easier for new players to get into the game, because instead of having to memorize a whole bunch of different cards that all say a bunch of different things, all they need to do is see what a keyword is, look up what it means, and continue playing the game. It also just makes it a little bit less intimidating to look at a card that just has 1, 2, 3 words on it than seeing a card that has like a whole paragraph. Some have suggested that Yu-Gi-Oh should take this approach to really refine and redesign their card text to make it easier for new players to get into the game by using keywords. I have a few problems though. In this video, I'm going to list those problems and explain why I think keywords don't work in Yu-Gi-Oh. Reason number one, too many cards do too many different things. Yu-Gi-Oh is a massive card game. It's 25 years old, has 10,000 or more cards in it, and is a unique card game in the fact that all of the cards, sans whatever is on the ban list itself, are fully legal and can be used whenever you want in the modern format. This creates some issues, which also makes the game a little bit less new player friendly, but I'm going to focus on why keywords is important for Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Yu-Gi-Oh cards all do something different. Even cards within the same archetype do something different. Let's take, for example, a very prominent meta strategy right now, and that would be Kashtira. Kashtira Fenrir is a very, very powerful card that does a couple different things. For one, it special summons itself to the field for free as long as you don't control any monsters. That sounds like it would be a pretty easy keyword, right? And it could be. I don't dispute that. It's a very simple effect, and I think you could shorten that into a keyword if you wanted to. But Kashtira Fenrir also has another effect. Fenrir can add from your deck to your hand any Kashtira monster during the main phase. Now, you could just add a keyword that says search and maybe specify that you search a Kashtira monster, but I'm not sure how that really helps, because you also have Unicorn. Unicorn can allow you to search a Kashtira spell from the deck to the hand. So would you have to put search spell or search Kashtira spell? Because then, in that scenario, you're going to have to do that for basically every searcher card in the game. Whereas also some searcher cards are way more versatile, like Rhoda. Rhoda can search any warrior monster that's level 4 or lower from the deck to the hand. You can't just put search warrior because it can only be level 4 or lower. So you'd have to put search warrior level 4 or lower or do something like that. And then it's no longer really a key word and more like a key phrase. On top of that, one of the things about Magic and their keywords and other card games is that a lot of the cards will do the same thing, right? A flying monster has flying and they're all like birds or dragons or something like that. And they do similar things and they just add keywords on top of each other in varying different variations that make the cards unique. But I think one of Yu-Gi-Oh's strengths is that every card, and especially the archetypes that the cards are built around, are very, very unique because there are no keywords. Because you can just make the cards do whatever you want. Konami can build card text to be whatever they want, which opens the door for decks to feel so drastically different from each other that it makes it really, really fun and every deck very, very unique. I'm not sure how you make a deck like Vanquish Soul, which can do both searching. It pops cards in columns, it interacts with columns in main monster zones, it does links, it can bounce cards from the field to the hand and special summon other ones. I'm not sure how you deal with decks like Vanquish Soul if you have keywords. Because again, Vanquish Soul plays very specifically. There's not really a deck that plays exactly like Vanquish Soul, and I think that applies for a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh decks, and I think that's because Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have keywords. Decks are allowed to be worded in whatever way that Konami chooses, which can create some issues in terms of ruling and things like that, but it also creates a lot of variety and a lot of unique, fun ways that Konami can create decks that are really fun and interesting in how they play. I should say, this is not to say that Magic and other games with keywords can't have unique cards, can't have unique decks. I just think Yu-Gi-Oh does it in such a way that's really, really neat and interesting and is core and integral to its identity. The other thing is that the way cards interact would mean that there'd be way too many rulings and specific new keywords that would need to be made, and they would probably just muddle things anyway. Let's look at two different cards that do similar-ish things, but have very different wording. First, we have Baron de Fleur. If you know what this card does, it's an Omni Negate. We call it an Omni Negate because it can negate a monster effect, a spell, or a trap, right? However, the difference being is that Baron negates the activation, which is different from negating the effect of a card. Meanwhile, a card like Ash Blossom and Joy Spring does not negate the activation, but negates the effect. So if you were to use Baron de Fleur on, say, a branded fusion and negate the activation, your opponent is perfectly fine being able to activate another branded fusion because that activation was negated, they can play another one. They can activate another one. Whereas with Ash Blossom, the activation is legal and resolves, but the effect does not. So they won't be able to use branded fusion twice. That small difference is just one of many throughout the Yu-Gi-Oh card game. And I feel like that adding keywords will just make that even more complicated because, again, just like the previous point, too many cards just do too many different things that make them unique. The other point I'd make here is that Yu-Gi-Oh, unfortunately, would have to do a massive reboot, or they would have to completely do a set rotation or something like that if they wanted to implement a change like this. The reason being is because of the fact that another reason why Yu-Gi-Oh is unique, all of the cards from before are legal. I think this is also the same reason why TCG doesn't have bullet point text, just like the OCG does, which I've always thought would make reading cards a lot simpler because instead of having to say, hey, I'm using Baron's second effect to negate instead of the first effect to pop, you can just say, hey, I'm using its second effect and point to the bullet point, whereas otherwise in the TCG, you kind of have to read the whole thing and try to find out where the second effect is. It's not as pretty. It looks like it's a big jumble of text. I wish that we had it like OCG, but I think the reason that we don't, and also the reason why we can't have keywords in Yu-Gi-Oh is because right now as it stands, Yu-Gi-Oh has all cards legal from the beginning of its history as long as it's not on the ban list. And so therefore, Konami would have to either reprint all of those cards or run the risk of having some cards have keywords while also playing with other cards that don't have keywords, which can get really confusing, especially if you're a new player. If the whole point of adding keywords is to make it new player friendly, having some cards have keywords and other cards not have keywords would be very confusing to a new player. On top of that, if you say, well, why don't they just reboot it? Well, now Yu-Gi-Oh is not the same anymore. You would have to do a set rotation, or you would have to completely reboot the entire card game, and then it's not Yu-Gi-Oh that we know and love today anymore. If that would happen, then Yu-Gi-Oh would fundamentally be a different game, and I'm not sure if that would fly in the modern day. To end off this video, I think Yu-Gi-Oh has a lot of problems, and the new player experience is definitely one of them. However, I simply personally don't think that keywords are the way to fix that. I don't believe Yu-Gi-Oh can have keywords. I think we're well beyond that at this point, and I also think that there are bigger problems with Yu-Gi-Oh as a card game than keywords. I would rather the focus be on us only having one format that's officially sanctioned for the most part. I would rather focus us on having a better tutorial in Master Duel, for example, than worry about just adding keywords to Yu-Gi-Oh. But those are just the thoughts of one guy who's just kind of okay at Yu-Gi-Oh. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section below. This is a different kind of video. I don't usually do these kind of discussion videos. I usually don't wade in on the any of the controversy, drama, or like any of the discourse that surrounds Yu-Gi-Oh on a day-to-day basis. But I thought I'd do this one because I thought it was interesting and wanted to give my take on keywords specifically. And I want to hear your take down in the comment section below. And if you like this style of content, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so I know that you want to see more of this. There's always stuff happening with Yu-Gi-Oh! There's always stuff to talk about. So if you want to hear my opinions on it and have a discussion down in the comment section below, let me know and I'll keep making more of this content. But with that, this was SmashtonYGO. Peace.